Welcome to the Hospitality Maverick podcast with me, Michael Tingsar. We at Hospitality Mavericks are here to inspire leaders to create heart-centered and profitable businesses from the inside out, the kind that both employees and customers love and support. Thanks to BizSimply for sponsoring this episode as our show partner. And BizSimply is the all-in-one HR, workforce management, road and operations software designed and built by hospitality experts to make every shift run like clockwork. And we join forces to help the industry to find new ways to become even more innovative in how we lead our people, how we operate, to how we grow our businesses, to how we serve our customers. Together we want to share strategies and tools that can make the industry thrive long term, not just survive.
You know, people rely on leaders. They rely on you. You're their hope, you're their normal, you're their whatever it might be. And if you're not feeling at your best, or you're not maximising the impact that you're making, then it's going to channel through. So you can't look after others unless you look after yourselves. And of course, there's lots of ways to look after yourselves. Our focus is very much are you being the most impactful leader you could be? So that will be a question. Are we getting the best out of you?
This is Nathan Alt, Chief Publisher at the GC Index and co-author of Coaching Me and Coaching You. We have before had Nathan's co-creator, Dr. Mervyn Smith, on the show. And for some of you, this conversation and thinking will not be all new. But don't worry, we will take it to the next level when it comes to knowing and understanding what you need to do to drive your own and your team's impact. When we recorded this episode, we had in mind that the last year had been extremely hard for everyone. Lots of change and more is coming. We start the conversation talking about the power of the GC Index as a leadership tool from the perspective that you need more than ever to understand your people and how you can help them make positive impact on themselves and the business. And you need, in a way, to think about how you make them unshakable. Nathan gives a clear overview of the tool and the model and how that supports it. He shares real practical examples of where the tool have made massive impact on people, culture, and business results. And we also do a live feedback session on my GC Index profile. So you can have the experience of what reflection this gave me as a leader and business owner. Before you tune in, please sign up for a weekly newsletter packed with more Maverick insights, strategies, and tools. Find the link in the show notes via hospitalitymavericks.com. And to help you and your team navigate the current storms in hospitality better, please also download your free copy from Fragile to Agile white paper at bizsimply.com under the resource tab via the link in the show notes. Now, grab your notebook. There's some great leadership tools and reflection in this conversation. And if you, like me, also believe that great change starts with you and your own understanding of yours and others' strengths, this episode's for you. Now, let's get started changing your game. I've been really looking forward to today's conversation because I'm going to learn something about myself. And I hope actually that will again evolve out to you start thinking a bit about how you can make the biggest impact on your own performance, but also your teams and your organization. Earlier, a couple of years ago, I think it's almost 2 years ago, we had Dr. Mervyn Smith from the GC Index on as a guest, and he talked about the theory behind it and the kind of impact this tool was doing within organizations. And since then, I also have been certified and involved in the GC Index and done a lot of feedback on other leaders out there. And I found this is a very powerful conversation. And to actually inspire you a bit in these times, I brought Nathan, the other co-founder of the GC Index, into today's conversation. And the reason why I did that is because when I talk with CEOs and leaders out there, I can see that we've gone through a lot of change. More is coming. We're in a year of transition. What does this all mean for your team? Probably mean they're very tired and more change is coming. And how do we actually get the best out of people? You get the best out of people, I believe, when you play on their strengths and actually utilizing that. And that's actually what we will try to inspire a bit to go out and stop thinking so much about job roles, but more about how can you get the best out of people in their jobs and get the best business impacts. So with that said, welcome to the podcast, Nathan.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm very well. And yourself?
Yeah, very well, thank you. The sun is shining for once, which is nice. Yeah, after all the cold weather and rain we've had. So, yeah, it's put a smile on my face.
Yeah, it seems like we are, like I said, it was a year transition, but it seems like here in the UK, where we both are based, you're a bit closer to London than I am. It seems like spring is coming and vaccination is rolling fine. So it seems like the world is opening. So we need to reopen business again for many people. So this is the opportunity to get ready for that as well.
Yeah, we dare to dream of good times ahead, which is great for everyone. So yeah, let's keep hoping and working towards that.
I will not butcher what the DC index is about. I will leave that to you. So, how would a presenter introduce you and the GC index if you were doing a presentation at a conference? As I know you're done lots of.
Yeah, they change a lot, depending on the audience. But so my title is I'm the chief polisher here at the GC Index. There's a number of reasons why I call myself the chief polisher. One of them is I don't necessarily fit into the traditional expectations of what a CEO is supposed to do. So I feel more comfortable calling myself a chief polisher rather than pretending something that I'm not and everyone else expects a CEO to do. We can talk a bit about that later. The GC Index in itself, as you had Dr. John on before, so he is my co-founder and yeah, he's the brains of the outfit, and so hopefully that was a good session. But my focus is very much on the business impact that GC Index drives. Quite simply, all the GC Index is a high level business model. Quite frankly, it shows how individuals, teams, and organizations can best make their impact and contribution to business objectives. So whether that's in a startup environment or right through to big global organizations, it's how do we get our people to best make an impact individually, as teams, as business units, to work together to drive business performance, whatever that might be for your audience. So obviously, they're very different depending on the organisations that they're serving. So we get asked, what is the GC Index? Yeah, a lot. And when you look at the GC Index, a lot of people confuse it with a psychometric tool. A psychometric assessment. That's what they often gets confused by, because that's all we've ever known in the last 40, 50 years. And in the last 40, 50 years, when we look at the decisions that we need to make on people as business leaders or any as business employees, it doesn't matter. We make people decisions. The only data that's been available to us historically has been skills and experience, traditionally our CVs, or then personality. And the personality tools have been out there for years. But if you were to ask a business person, when did they last make a business decision on a personality tool about someone, they'll look at you like you were mad. And they'll be right to look at you like you were mad, yeah, because you don't make business decisions on personality tools. So the GC Index plugs that gap. It provides a lens for business leaders and business owners to show how their people best impact a business cycle or a business, and enable them to make business decisions about their people. That's what we do.
I know you have a lot of contacts over different industry. What are the biggest worries right now for CEOs out there when it comes to the people element and the impact?
Well, it's really interesting, Michael, because obviously it does depend on the industry, the organisation. Because what you're seeing is that some organisations and businesses, this actually this pandemic has been a good thing for them business wise. In some ways, they've either thrived because their business opportunity or their business solution just is more advanced, given the sort of COVID pandemic has brought upon us. And then you've got those that have really struggled because their business has been wiped away. So there's definitely a whole spectrum of winners and losers in these things. And like anything, change will bring sort of opportunity, or it will potentially take people out of business. And so we look at them in when we go to organizations, we look at and talk to CEOs. I try and keep it quite simple, really. It's, yes, the world has changed. Yeah, we know that. Yeah, and it doesn't mean the businesses have to make a wholesale change with their people, but we break it into three things. Look, there'll be some things that you've always done and you're going to continue to do. Yeah, and that could be anything from I've still got to pay the rent, or I've still got to, I've still got to do the accounts. Then there'll be some things that you have to incrementally change, do things differently. I might need to put this online. Yeah, I normally did this physically. I might need to put this online, or we don't have meetings face to face now. We have them online. They're different. They're small changes. And then you've got other businesses, other things you're going to have to do that are radically different in your business. So we first of all sit down with CEOs and go, well, where do you see those three elements? With people, it's themselves. Again, it depends on the type of workforce that you have. Of course, we're doing a lot more around distributed workforce and remote working. That is clear. But there is a big play with the GC index around well-being and resilience, and because people are burnt out, for various reasons, whether they're homeschooling, whether they're not having the FaceTime, the connection, whether with their manager, with their leader, with their teams. The whole routine has gone. It's quite nice sometimes just walking downstairs to go to work, but some people are missing sort of commutes and journeys and things. So there's a whole well-being piece. And I think probably best to sum it up will be one of our clients that said, look, we are extraordinarily busy. We cannot change our workload. Our workload is going to be relentless. But with the GC index language and framework, we can manage the energy of our workforce. And that really gets to the bottom of the GC index. It's energy. If people are energized, how do we make people energized at work as best we can? And that's what we focus on.
Yeah, and I think that's super interesting, because that's actually, again, in a situation where there's so much change, where actually you can get your team or the individual to work on things where they really thrive in, jobs or projects where they really can play their strengths. Then it's easier, even though there's a lot of workload, it's definitely easier to get through that period, because you are actually playing on your strengths instead of catching up with something you may be not getting super much energy from, but you just have to get done because that's the job, and it probably becomes a bit more tedious. So that's a really good example, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And the reverse is true as well. People that are used to being busy are now not busy. It's the reverse effect, of course. And so, but I think it's very difficult to generalize, because you've got, there's winners and losers and somewhere in between across all of this. So we would just keep it simply. Are we getting the best out of our people? Yeah. Are we getting the best out of them? Yeah, for their sakes as well as the business, and that's really core to the GC index message, and we take it from there.
And what other things are your typical client working with the tool? You said well-being and resilience right now. Is there other key areas where the tool is very impactful when you work with it?
Yeah, so let me go right back, because I appreciate a number of your audience won't necessarily know about the GC index. You can obviously find out more about it if you hadn't had the podcast with Dr. John Mervyn Smith, who will obviously we'll talk about that in great detail in the podcast, but the previous one. But we would take a view that everybody in the world has a positive impact to make. So whether you're a Fortune global CEO or a child in a developing country, so people really strive to be potent. Everyone has a positive impact to make. Now, that sounds a little bit Miss Universe, Miss World, or whatever it is, a bit grandiose and Disney, but that's exactly what we're trying to do, is unleash the energy and the impact of everybody. So we have a young people index version as well, for 11 to 18-year-olds. Okay, and we talk about we want to unleash the impact of sort of over 10% of the world's population, which is quite a big number, and we're on our way to that. Yeah, I mean that's what we're trying to achieve. So when you take all of that big grand statement, and we're looking at the human need to be potent, or a human need to make an impact, it means that the GC index is used in so many ways. Yeah, more ways than I can even think of. We say here that 95% of the ways the GC index is being used, we don't even know yet. And you'll see from our 170 partners around the world, the things that they're doing with the GC index language is just inspiring for us. It's phenomenal. So when you look at things like well-being, resilience, internal dialogue about people, touching the well-being, the equality, diversity, inclusion space. It really is about individuals that are feeling, if they're feeling de-energized, how can we make them feel energized? Can I give you a couple of examples, particularly from business leaders, if that's helpful?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
So we for those that don't know the GC index, there are 5 ways that people want to make an impact. So we have 2 of those are ideas focused, which is game changers. So game changers are much more focused on possibilities. They want to make an impact through doing things differently. They don't value arbitrary rules. They just live in a world of possibilities and see things very differently. They're excited by change and possibilities. Another role is the strategist, which is ideas focused again, but they need structure and they need to embed their ideas in things that they know about, a model, a pattern, a trend. This doesn't have to be a McKinsey strategist or a Harvard MBA. It could be an epidemiologist looking for patterns and trends to make forecasts of what's going to happen with this virus, for example. So you've got game changers and strategists, ideas focused. Then below that, we've got task focused individuals, implementers, just want to get stuff done. Stop thinking, stop talking, stop worrying, just get on with it. Let's achieve some stuff. That's what implementers want to do. Then we have polishers who are task focused as well, but in a much more obsessive way. Polishers like things to always be better, consistently improve them, build upon other people's ideas and tasks. Then in the middle, we have the proclivity or the energy of playmakers. Now, playmakers have a belief system that if you get the relationships right, everything else will follow. This is not about those learned behaviors we've been taught for the last 40, 50 years of being socially skilled and politically correct and being a nice person. These people genuinely want to drive through relationships with people and get things done through people. So when you start looking, and now we're all bits of these, right? We're not one or the other. It's not a typology. There are 100,000 different versions of this, right? So you're not one or the other. But if you take them, let's just take strategists, for example. I wrote a piece about strategists, particularly because a lot of whether they were CEOs or just strategists more normally, not have to be CEOs. They could just be, in any level of a business. They were really struggling with the pandemic, because we've never seen this before, and strategists, they like to anchor, see connections and points and data, and we've come a lot of strategist business owners that felt a bit loose and they didn't know what to do. They panicked because they hadn't seen this before. Do we compare this to the dot-com crash? Do we compare this to the financial crisis from before, or how do we compare this? It's going to be bad, and they were really struggling because they couldn't see a way out. I mean, you obviously in hospitality, even more accentuated given the challenges that the hospitality industry were going through. So they were really struggling, and then that was really affecting people's mental health and well-being in their business. Whereas you talk to a lot of the game changers, they loved it because they saw it as opportunity, they saw it as possibilities, and this is great. I can see opportunity in this pandemic, and so it was really interesting watching game changers and strategists, with helping each other out through the time of the pandemic, and of course you've got big implementers who just want to get stuff done. They want to be potent. If implementers aren't delivering stuff, they really feel de-energized. And so it's about having those conversations with people around, what energizes you, what doesn't, and that's kind of where we get to. And as you probably appreciate, I'm not the most structured of individuals, so I'm hoping this is making sense for you and your listeners.
Nathan is not a strategist. I can expose him already there. But the interesting thing is, Nathan, because I had a feedback session with a CEO from the hospitality industry, and this CEO was a 9 on the polisher, and 7 on game changer. So in a way, the person was thriving. There was opportunities. And actually at the same time, they were actually seeking opportunities. One of the things was cheap property suddenly on the market, actually expanded the business during the pandemic. but I've really struggled with that and accepting the quality or the excellence of some work just has to be 20% and not 80%
Yes.
before we move on. And I was like, so excited, but also really frustrated about that. Maybe there was not the resources or the time to do it to 110%. Had to accept 20, 50, or 60% on some things and then move on. So that was a big learning, and there was like a lot of frustration in that, and still having that demand to the team as they go through a situation like that is not going to create the outcomes you want long term. So we talked a lot about you need to think about the polisher long term. Then there's a point where you can activate the polisher, because no organization get excellent if they don't polish things off and make sure it really works and ticks, especially in hospitality that's so process driven. But right now you should use your game changer in this and really lift that in this environment.
Yeah, you raise a good point, because obviously you're getting into the more the complexity, well, not the elegance of the GC index, because obviously we're not one or the other. So if we just take your example there of a game changer polisher, they're really interesting as leaders, actually, and because game changers and polishers tread a fine line between excitement and anxiety. Yeah, and that's kind of what you described to me there. There's opportunity here, excitement. Oh, but is it going to be good enough, right? And now that they don't just create anxiety and excitement for them, that's their own internal challenge, which you've articulated there. But then, if you imagine how that manifests to the rest of the team, and how then this individual can see opportunity, they want to continue to push, and the team is a bunch of implementer, playmakers, but strategies that needs to be more concrete. They feel a bit unnerved by this. They're not being communicated to properly. You can start seeing a big disconnect. And I'm not sure if that was the case for your individual, but certainly with game changer polisher leaders, they do drive that excitement, but they breed anxiety in others as well. And of course, that has ripple effects for your business as well, of course.
That was funny enough when you mentioned that, just to ducktail this. There was a lot of implementers in reporting into this CEO, because there's a hospitality have a lot of these people. Let's just get it done. Let's just get moving, and they had to stop all the time because of lockdowns as well. So there was this feel that, wow, we have something to work on, something new, exciting, and then it was plucked out again. We need to restructure, do things differently. And they really struggled with that. And it was not the change, but it was that thing that then we don't have anything to do again. Okay, we have to wait. And that depleted them a bit on a confidence point of view. So you're absolutely right. So that's a really, really, really valid point. I saw that.
Well, they will need to feel purposeful. Implementers need to feel purposeful. And if they're not being purposeful, then then of course they're going to start. It's going to affect them in many ways. Whether that's lack of confidence, whether that's lack of energy, whether that's and if, like you say, if you're constantly stopping, that's really going to affect these individuals.
So we talked a bit about the GC index. You're giving the overview, and there's much more information on the website. But we have the big overview. We have 5 profiles there, and we thought to bring it to life a bit to the audience that you would go through my report. So we would try to do a live feedback session on my report, and I'm really looking forward to that, because I always thought my report was a bit like, oh yeah, I'm a bit of everything and not really anything because of the scores I have. So what about if we go down that route now and we have a little conversation around that, and then we see, because I think many of the examples we're talking about will come out here as well, and I can talk a bit about what has happened in my year of the pandemic and how that's impacted my profile.
Yep. Well, that'd be great. I mean, I think it's obviously quite difficult for those listening to get the model in their head. So just give a couple of the mechanics, really. So I've mentioned the 5 ways that you can make an impact. So there's game changer strategist, there's implementer, polisher, and playmaker. And when you get your report, as we're talking about Michael's, you get a 24-page report. You get a score out of 10 on each of those, and they're all independent. So some people get lots of high scores, some people get 2 or 3 high scores, 1 dominant high score, some low scores. And I don't like the word score, but we're tuned to think that low score is bad, high score is good. That's not the case in the GC index. A low score can be a strength as well as a weakness, and a high score can be a strength as well as a weakness. And then we're very clear on that. We're not measuring competence. The idea isn't to improve your scores and get them up. That's not how it works. We're just trying to understand how individuals best want to make an impact as a leader or in a role, and then how can this language help them be the best that they can be. So that's what we're going for. So Michael, did you want to just describe your profile in terms of the numbers, or did you want me to do that?
Yeah, I can do that. So I'm a 6 in game changer, and strategist I'm a 5, implementer 6, polisher 2, and 4 in playmaker.
So we would all So with the GC index, it always brings validation or revelation. So I think a good thing to ask is when do you feel at your best? So that's what we want to try and understand is when does an individual feel at their best? So Michael, just before we tuck into your profile, when have you felt at your best in a role? Yeah, when do you feel that you're most energetic or potent or making the right contribution? It could be your current role, it could be previous roles. When have you felt that?
I think it even in jobs, and it's actually working on the launching something. Or projects that nobody else wants to get their hands in. There may be sometimes even the most impossible project, and people think this is a very bad career move. I can remember that from my corporate days in McDonald's, where I took on some projects. If you looked at them as a strategist, you just think, no way, I'm not going to take that project on. It's mad. And then I like to be around people, and I like to get things done. I like a lot about efficiency. It's not about how pretty it looks. It's about, does it actually move the needle forward, and how can we learn quickly? And if I can be in those environments where I can, think big thinking, and but also I will call it almost creative problem solving. There's a problem, there's nobody else can find a solution on. I will find it very exciting to continue working on that. And even though how many times I'm coming up again. I think somebody described me once as, they can pull you underwater, but you will come up very quickly again. You'll, even when they think he's not going to come back after that, he will come back. So there's that kind of mentality. And I think also at some point we did some leadership development with a psychiatrist, was always interesting. And I got to see, she classified me as a elite soldier mentality that and she said, maybe I've chosen the wrong world to live in. Maybe I should have gone into special forces or something like that, because I just kept on coming back even though I was told no. So I don't know if that fits with what you see as well.
Well, there's a lot there actually, but before I jump into that, and because we want to hear the flip sides to the coin, when have you felt your worst? In what environments or what roles did you feel, this is really, I feel really drained here, or I'm not at my best here, or it's because you've clearly left the corporate world to go into, a much more entrepreneurial world as well. But I mean, it'd be interesting for your listeners to understand the flip side as well. When did you not feel most energized in a role or at your best?
I think the corporate thing is a combination of being able to getting these type of projects. You need to be in the right position or job to get that, or to have the right managers to be given entrepreneurial like project. And every time you solve one, you want the next one to more extreme. So I think that was actually the journey. I got a bit of confidence. I can actually take impossible things and make them happen. And then one point I left the corporate world, but also think where I would really struggle is where there is, and I understand that some organizations are more political than others. I would really feel that difficult, because I'm very much like okay, here's the pink elephant, let's do something about it. And that's not how it always works when there's a way of doing things, or politics or structures. You need to respect hierarchies that needs to be respected. Doesn't mean I don't understand it. I would not follow it. But I probably doesn't feel energized in that a decision takes a very long time, for example, if I think it's obvious this needs to happen. So I think that's the best way of describing the downside. And then when I have to, everybody starts when they're young, we need to implement and we need to polish. And I've also been in a situation where I have to tidy up a lot of spreadsheets and collect market data. And I must say that those weeks I'm not looking back to ever do again, because
Yeah.
I was not energized by it at all.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's a great, always useful when you look at the GC index, look at it in some context of when did you feel at your best and when did you not feel at your best. That's always a good thing, because we've all been there. We've all had those times when we're absolutely buzzing, yeah, and we're top of the world, and then there's other times where we think, oh, I just can't get out of bed to go to work today. I can't feel anything worse than, in your instance, spreadsheets. It could be anything, yeah. So if we look at your profile, you've got two high scores there, or highest scores of game changer and implementer. Let's just unpick the game changer first. So you've said a lot of this already, just without probably realizing it, but game changers are always looking at new ways, new possibilities, okay, at doing things. So you mentioned pink elephants, or the bigger projects, or the project that no one else would take on. And I think in the corporate world as well, is the game changers have a different appetite to risk to others. So like strategists and implementers. So if you look at the GC index model, the left-hand side of our model, which is very implementer strategist, has a very different appetite to risk to certainly game changers. So for game changers, the risk actually, and you can confirm this or not with me now, is the risk of actually not doing something is far greater, yeah, than doing than doing something and failing. A game changer would much rather try something and fail than not to try something at all. So they don't see that risk, and they don't value the corporate hierarchy. They don't value the arbitrary rules. They don't value those things, because for them it's all about this idea, making this idea a reality. And is that you? Does that resonate with you in that instance?
It definitely does. And I can remember many times the frustration about that a process needs to be followed before we launch it, because we've already seen the first result. Why wouldn't we just go and roll it out? Because but no, we have to wait. It has to be put in line. It has to be rolled out. We need to have stakeholders asked. And I understand that from a conceptual point of view, but I really struggle with it. It frustrated me that we had such a great idea and we couldn't do anything about it before 6 months later.
Yeah, and I think that frustration is also linked to your implementer score, because game changer implementers together, and people wonder, well, how can they go together? You've got a very pragmatic implementer, yeah, that wants to get stuff done, and you've got this much more, existential game changer that talks in the world of things differently. But when they come together, we see a lot of game changer implementer combinations in technology innovation startups, because they like new ideas but get them quickly to be practical outcomes, yeah, and we actually call them creative problem solvers, which you've just said. But so that combination of game changer and implementer is coming through there in everything you've just articulated, actually. And this is great, because we haven't rehearsed this, right, in case you get these skeptical listeners. It was and so I'm really fascinated by that urge. What made you survive so long then in the corporate world? What was it? Because you did keep getting these different projects? Did you have a boss that gave you freedom? Were you just pragmatic enough to do the stuff you had to do because you got the different projects? What kept you there so long? Because you're clearly successful.
It's quite interesting. Actually, I would give it. I think actually was my boss, Lisa Lottehelms Olsen, if she listened to this. I think she very quickly found out. And I think if we haven't done one on her, but I think she will have really high polisher. And I think she found out at some point she couldn't. She was actually holding me down. I think she was very smart. He was one of the best leaders I worked for. So she found out I just give him that responsibility. He will take the responsibility. He will get it done in his own ways. And I just follow up on him that he remembers to seal all the dots off once in a while. So we make sure that we follow corporate recipe. And I think that works really well. So I think it was a lot about my boss giving me the trust, because I think I think I get very I'm very values driven on the top of that. So if I don't feel I have the trust when I go in, I think it's obvious that I will take the responsibility. But that's not always our opposite, because maybe I make people feel nervous, as my wife says sometimes. Michael, when you come in, it's like a storm sometimes, because you have already seen what other people have seen, and you need to take them on that journey. And I've been very aware about that, definitely the last year as well. So I think you're absolutely right that the reason why I survived was because I had a boss that understood that I needed that space to be able to do that. And also been unlucky not to have that, and really been demotivated, even though it was an exciting project, but really been demotivated. I had to report all the time because the game changer got frustrated about that.
It feels like you're getting slowed down. Yeah, I mean, at an extreme, and obviously you haven't got an extreme profile, but when we see an extreme game changers, for them, conformity is death. If they have to conform, you might as well kill me. I don't want to conform. And there's a there's a lovely story about one of our clients, and he was a sort of game changer, and he said, I remember this conversation with my mother when I was about 16 or 17, and I said, Mum, I want to be in the army. I want to go and be in the army. And she said to me, you can't be in the army. And he said, well, why? And she said, that's why. Yeah, because you ask too many questions, you don't want to conform, right? That's what game changers are like. And so if there's two things here for your listeners. If you are a much more game changer centered boss, CEO, yeah, understand that, as Michael has just said, that not everyone is going to see what you see that quickly. Yeah, everyone, they might trust you because you've earned some spurs before, but they're going to feel nervous, particularly if they're strategist, implementer, playmaker. Haven't got that game changer tendency. They're going to struggle with making sense of it, particularly their strategy. They're going to worry. Yeah, and so it's either thinking about how do you communicate and take those people with you, or actually, if you can't be bothered with that, and that's fine too, make sure you've got someone that's doing that for you. Yeah, okay, I think, and that might be what your boss was doing, was sort of protecting you in some ways in that corporate machine, was making sure that you had that space, and was looking for you. But I mean, you do have that 5 on strategist. So I mean, again, that's probably what helped you survive in that world a bit more. I think if that strategist score was any lower, I think that would be, if that was a 1 or a 2, then I think you may have potentially struggled a bit more. But I think with game changers in corporate environments, if they've got some strategist and some playmaker in there as well, it does help them survive. Yeah, it does help. Or they've got a boss that gives them room to survive.
I think the interesting thing with the strategist is, you're absolutely right. That was actually because I could not only articulate how we solved the problem, but I could also draw up a journey. I could map it out. And that's definitely one of the things where, I saved myself not looking, I would say in sometimes in a very structural environment, as I worked in McDonald's, if you don't have a plan, don't come to the table because nobody will take you serious. And I think you're right about that. And actually, funny enough, the exam I did best in university was strategy, and balanced scorecard as well, and which is very strategist subjects. But actually, I was very interested in it, and I have an interest in strategy. But do I follow the roadmap? No, I will probably change. But I can make a plan to make people feel comfortable, but then we'll just rip that plan apart if it doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, in the world of ideas, we do confuse strategy. Strategists and game changers, they're different. They're ideas focused. I remember one individual in the early days. He was one of the youngest ever strategy director for BT here in the UK, and he hated it because he wasn't a strategist. He'd been picked because he's got good ideas. He could see the future. He was very creative, very game changer, and that's what he'd come out as. But he hated that uniformity that strategy brings, that linear plan, step-by-step approach, put things in boxes. And that's very different. It doesn't mean that one's better than the other. They're just different. They're different approaches. And I think it's good to recognise that. And the GC Index helps with that as well. It helps people recognise, where their energies are and where they want to play. I mean, I look at your Playmaker score there. If I was to give you a team of 20, 30 people to report directly to you, and you had to look after them, you had to make sure they're okay, and giving, what would that be your perfect role, Michael?
Yeah, it's a very good question because you asked me about 5 years ago. That's what the role I wanted to have. But in today's world, I probably want a smaller team. I probably want the family team, the 12 people. And it's not because I really believe in putting people first, but I think I get quite frustrated when I have to manage the people. So I will probably feel really excited about setting the North Star. This is where we're going, drawing up some kind of roadmap. And then I would like to give responsibility to them. And I will be there. I will give feedback when we go off the values and behaviors I would like to see. But I will not be. I probably wouldn't be the best mentor on the skills, and I probably would have get more and more impatient because I just want to move if there's people blocking us moving forward. So I know because I didn't know at that time, but I can remember a situation where I was responsible for a team where the two people who report into me were strategists, polisher, both of them. I'm 100% sure. And first of all, I felt we never got anything done. We were just talking about how we go from one step to the next, and we needed to move 3 steps, not 2 steps a week. And it was always coming back to analyzing and polishing documents that has to look right before we send them off. And of course, they have to look right. But as I said to them, I don't believe the executive team will read every comma in this kind of thing. We just need to get it to them so they can see we are progressing. But also, they saved me because if I sent that thing off too early, we will probably have failed massively. But I can remember the frustration of having that and leading that. And normally, a playmaker, as I see, they're very patient with people. They understand that everybody has to have their time. You need to understand them. So I think there's some impatience there. It doesn't mean that I don't care. It just, for me, it's important that we do the mission. Then we put our personals problems or needs in front of the mission, I think.
The idea and the task are just more important at the end of the day, and that's not a negative. Doesn't mean you're not a nice person or a really good person. That's what the playmaker is, and we tend to see with threes and fours, sometimes fives on playmaker. These individuals really value collaboration. They really value the team effort. They get that we need all these people around us, but there comes a point where it's quite an English phrase, but they don't do needy. Yeah, they want people to they don't want to have to tell someone 3 or 4 or 5 times. They want people to be quite self-sufficient, and they just want them to go away and do it. If they've got people that are demanding a lot more time off of them, and if they feel like they're being slowed down, then they start to get drained. Yeah, whereas a higher playmaker just has more energy for that. Yeah, and so again, when you're looking at putting your teams together, if you're the leader and you've got quite a low playmaker score, find one of your playmakers. Yeah, find a playmaker to do a lot of that energy for, because you'll feel de-energized. You could probably do it. The GC thing is not about skills. Yeah, you could be the best people person ever. Yeah, it doesn't mean, but if it drains you, yeah, we don't want you to be doing that. Yeah, and I think that's what's coming out here. And then finally, well, the polisher score is low. You've mentioned that already in some of your vernacular before. I want to get the project. I want to get it done. I want to get it out. I don't just want to be incrementally improving stuff. I'm on to the next one. Yeah, I want to be on to the next one. Let someone. And I think if you've already mentioned, if you get drained in those polisher roles, if you find yourself in that polisher role, you could do it maybe, but you're going to get drained and de-energized quite quickly. Yeah, and so it's about recognise when you're in that role. Now, my last question, however, is obviously you're got your own business and businesses and startup business. Now, how do you manage that? Because you've got to do a bit of everything. We see a lot of people starting up their business and they start it to escape from a lot of this conformity, and they can use their ideas, but they still got to do the accounts or the washing up or the tax. They've still got to do a lot of things. And how are you managing that balance of creativity, expression, doing things differently, big dreams with the mundane day-to-day stuff?
There's two elements in it. Is that you need to get stuff done, and I think the implementer helps me there. But sometimes my game changer I'm actually writing a blog that's going to come out later this month about sometimes I almost start too many things, and then at some point I find, I need to stop something because this is overwhelmed. So I've now done a practice about actually the last year where I started now. I got inspired from different things, but it's a stop doing list instead of to-do list. And every quarter I take that and I go through all the things going on and I stop some things because it overwhelms me and people around me if I don't do that. And some of it is just parked maybe a quarter or delayed, but or maybe totally just taken off the list. So that's one thing how I manage it. It comes to the polisher thing. I really try to find somebody else to either support me, or it could be you take the books for example. I've been, finally I found the right bookkeeper, so like a bookkeeper that holds me accountable that I have to deliver this, because if there's an individual holding me accountable, I don't want to disappoint them, and it really knacks my nature. And I don't know if there's anything to do with the GC index, but that really can make me fix those things that normally if I had to be responsible for accounts, it'll probably never get done before it was really a bad situation. I've actually been there once. So, but I understand I need to have the polisher. Really, if I was setting a team, I will always, if I didn't have a polisher, I will go and look for a polisher first. Even though how annoying I think they are, I just know that's where I had to play my role at CEO. And I think how else I get things done is that I make very clear to people where they would get most value working with me from the outset.
Yeah. Can I just raise one more point? I know we're probably coming out of time at some point, but the really I want to talk about this low score being a strength, because you said something really interesting, and actually you've got 2 on polisher, right? And so you've spent a lot of this time saying I'm not very good at that. I get other people to do that. However, that too is also a strength. Yeah. And you mentioned one of those strengths there is when to cut your losses. Yeah. So you sit down there and you go, right, I'm not doing this, or this. You mentioned that if you were a higher polisher, cutting your losses will be more challenging. Yeah. Because does that make sense? So actually the low score there will enable, we see a lot of polishers that over deliver. They continue to see the good in someone or good in something. They keep trying to do it, and they put too much effort into it. Whereas lower polisher scores are really good at going, no, that's it, cut your losses, let's move on. And I think that's where a low score becomes a strength. Yeah, and obviously a higher polisher score can become a weakness in that instance.
Yeah, I think you're right, because especially also with experience, I can definitely see that. That again, doing the stop doing list has definitely also kept me a bit of sanity in the pandemic, because you have to try a lot of things and you have to feel that's okay. We spent it a couple of weeks on that. It didn't work. We'll save it. We've done the work now. We'll maybe use it something else. Move on. Let's start the new thing. And because the game changer have no problem starting a new thing, let's just move on very quickly. But I think another thing that's interesting in how I actually work with things, or just reflecting on it, as you said, and sometimes it doesn't mean that I get rid of it, but actually I think it comes from maybe spending time in a corporate and McDonald's. I actually find a way to systemize it so I have to use very little time on it, or I just have to check if the process works. So I like to create overviews, either written in hand over my wall over here, or I would have a technology that will automate it for me. Anything I don't have to come back to more than once. So I think that's the way I think about automation a lot in life.
Yeah, implementers are very pragmatic. Yeah, they're very pragmatic at that in that instance. So yeah, I can definitely see that happening. So I mean, has this been helpful? Of course, the viewers can't see your profile and stuff, but how have you mean, how have you used this language and data of your profile in your world? How has it helped you? Because you asked me some questions about, well-being and resilience and leadership. Have you got any sort of key takeaways? How it's helped you in your business or with your team before you tell me to shut up?
I will not do that because this is really valuable. I think this is an interesting question. So, one of the businesses I'm involved in, as the pandemic broke out, we took our profiles out and looked at them, and we found out and we celebrated that we had a lot of game changer in that team. As I said, let's remember that as we go into this. We have a lot of, and we actually didn't have a lot of polisher. I said, this is actually going to be our strength. So actually, that's an example of where you actually could set the scene and say, we actually have the skills within this team, and we had implemented skills as well. We had two of us who were reasonably high implement, so we can come up with a lot of ideas quickly, and we can test them, and we can move on. And just that, and they had seen those profile maybe 6 months before. They of course forgotten all about it, but just that he pulled that up and gave them that picture, and we talked about how do we actually, okay, so we have these, so new plan is this, who's going to do that, so you do this, you do that, you do that. And actually one of them was actually, he's quite high on a polisher, and said, you will not get involved in this before we have tested the first version, then you can polish it off. But and then we made very clear rules about how we made decisions, so everybody could get the energy they needed in these things. So we wrote down some principles. So that was really powerful. That was one of the examples where I thought, okay, as the shit hits the fan, you can really mentally set people up for this. You can almost prime them to that this is what we're going to do. And it's a very different conversation to say, we have all these problems, we need to get them solved. No, how do we set ourselves up to solve problems? Because we don't even knew at that point the amount of problems we will be hitting. And also we had a conversation about, we're probably also going to do some things we don't get energy from because they just have to get done.
Got to get done.
Exactly. In this environment. And then I think from the mental health question, that's a really interesting question, because I think that's probably one of our biggest challenges as leaders for ourselves and our people is the mental health. And I think I've been very aware of making sure in the work I do in a week, I just take it down to a week at a time, that I get my game changer and strategies and implementer satisfied, that I get some stuff done. I feel check. So I have a method to evaluate myself every day, and that makes me feel good. I got that done. Very aware about habits as well, that they are done. I follow my practices around that. And then I go back on a weekly level and reassess my plan, my individual plan, but also the companies that I'm involved in. Are we actually on track? So I work strategic with some things. So I'm not just in the doing mode, because I think in a period like this, you can go in firefighting mode. And then I made sure I learned some new skills and done some new things within the pandemic as well. And not just focusing on where the problem is right now, but also say, okay, well, there's a new future on the other side. What kind of skills do I believe I need to work on? And actually talking with maybe people that I wouldn't normally talk with about business challenges and so on. Actually just brainstorming ideas in principle, not really. And that's maybe enough, or learning a new skill, hobby or something like that. That's enough to celebrate the game-changing skill. So yeah, so that's how I've looked at it, and I thought probably more. I didn't take the model out and looked at it. I was thinking, okay, what will make me come true this year, the 2020, and now I'm probably thinking 2021, the transition year. How I'm going to use the profile to its best advantage.
Yeah, and you make a very good point there, because you do have your high scores of game changer, strategist, and implementer, but it is the constellation of those energies you just spoken about. Because if we just have you just game changing without any real strategy or getting stuff done, you wouldn't be at your best there. If you were just doing strategy without new ideas and delivering anything, you wouldn't be your best there. And if you're just delivering stuff without actually having new staff and making sense for the business, making sense for clients, you wouldn't be at your best there. So it's often when you look at a GC index profile, you look at your scores and you ask the question, what if I took one of these away? Or what if one of these were missing in my day-to-day? How would I feel? And if we took any one of those three away from you, then for a consistent length of time, then it will be detrimental to your impact, to your mental health, to your well-being, to your energy, whatever. So when you look at your profile, just make sure that you're getting enough of each of those, which you just articulated. Because if you're not, then it's definitely time to have a look at that and what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very good question, and I think it's very relevant for the world we live in right now, that everybody checks in and make sure they are balanced out on the mental health bit. I'm quite sure that people got some really good stuff out of this, and it's going to be interesting to hear what you say out there. So please let us know what you learned from listening to this feedback, because it was a bit like a game changer project to bring it out to real world. And I put Nathan a bit on, said, do we need to do this? And he's a polisher, so he wants to make sure it's right. 100% is really good. Before we leave you, Nathan, today, I always ask this question. So in the time we're in, today's world, what would be your top 3 advice? Because I know you touch base with a lot of CEOs in small and large companies, corporate, not so corporate, startup environments. What will your advice be to them if you have to give them, you could give them 3 top advice right now?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I don't feel very comfortable giving generic advice because everyone's situation is very, very different, and what works for one doesn't work for the other. I think, I would say this, given the GC index, I would just take a step back and almost put their own oxygen mask on first, right? Because people rely on leaders. They rely on you. You're their hope. You're their normal. You're their whatever it might be. And so if you're not feeling at your best, or you're not maximizing the impact that you're making, then it's going to channel through. So you can't look after others unless you look after yourselves. And of course, there's lots of ways to look after yourselves. Our focus is very much are you being the most impactful leader you can be? So that will be a question. Are we getting the best out of you? Secondly, then, really is, when I would say this, is don't panic. I think definitely look, like we're going through change. Whether, look, Michael, I've been my parents in the hospitality business for 20 years, and business got closed and wiped out. A big believer of when one door closed, another one opens, and I think just those 3 things of what have we got to do that's the same, what can we incrementally improve, and what have we got to try and radically improve, and just tick those lists off. I think that's probably the thing that I've found been the most grounded. And I've got one last example of that. Actually, it was it was a fruit and veg shop. One of our guys got a local fruit and veg shop down in Devon, right? And they had to close at the time. It was back in and so they decided to build an online business. And they did delivery online. It was just a local shop. It wasn't like a particularly busy shop. It was more of a hobby. And then he said, and once they saw the opportunity of online and delivery and could see what was coming, they now have just got 4 or 5 vans now delivering, getting orders online, and their business is just thriving and they're having a lot of fun. But at that one point, it was, we're going to close the whole thing down. And so I think it's just there are opportunities out there. I know it's more difficult for others to find them than some, but one door closed, another one opens, and just start on that journey. But look after yourself first would be my top advice.
Super advice. And if people want to find out how they become more impactful, they can reach out to me, and then between us we can organize a little snap look into a profile of how your profile will look, and we will probably be happy to talk with one person from each organization.
I mean, that'd be a lot of fun. I mean, I think that'd be quite fun because it's all very well listening to me and you, and that's great, and we're nice people, and of course we're extremely interesting. But the real power would be if we could get a couple of either one company with 2 or 3 people that have taken the GC index and how it's helped them, or a couple of leaders reflecting on their different experiences. I think that might be quite something because the GC becomes powerful when you take it out of the individual and you start looking at it from a team or a collective and relationships. And I think that might be something that could be quite interesting for your listeners, of how do you get the best out of each other in this time, not just a one-on-one like we've had today. Although I could talk to you all day, and your story is so interesting. I think we could enhance that for your listeners as well, if they want to.
So I will drop my email and they can contact me, and we'll sort that out. And also, what we'll put in the show notes is all the websites with all the information you need, and also we will put my profile in the notes, so you are on access to the profile, so you can download, so you can have a look at what it means to be this type of a game changer, the creative problem solver. That's been absolutely great, Nathan. I think we talked about something that lots of people struggle with right now, is that how do I make an impact in all this? And everybody can make an impact, and we are all game changers in the end of the day. If people want to get in hold of you, Nathan, where's the best place to get in contact with you and wants to talk more about the GC Index or just have a chat?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a lot on LinkedIn. LinkedIn seems to be a good place. Do feel free to connect, or drop me a request. I'm sure we can have a chat. Obviously, contact Michael as well, and yeah, you can grab us on our website, thegcindex.com. Really easy. We're very accessible and friendly, and just like to hear people's experiences. The whole GC Index journey, I didn't think of this, right? Okay, this all been built through our partners and clients and businesses. So very welcome to anyone's opinions to help move us along for this collective journey. So yeah, do feel free to reach out.
Great. Thank you very much, Nathan, for coming on the show and sharing your valuable insight about how you make better impact.
Thank you very much, Michael. Pleasure as always speaking to you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Nathan, for your amazing overview of the GC Index and how it can work in practice when it comes to understanding your strengths as an individual and how it can impact business results. I'll recommend you now to ask yourself, do I really know my own and my team's strengths, and do I play to these when trying to achieve business impact? To get further inspiration on how to improve your game, tune in to episode 31, Making Your Impact, with Dr. Mervyn Smith, co-creator of the GC Index. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, please share, rate, review, or subscribe to one of our channels. A big thank you to BizSimply for supporting us, bringing great insights, strategies, and tools to help the industry thrive, not just survive. Check them out at bizsimply.com or on their social at BizSimply or BizSimplyHQ. You can also email them directly on advice@bizsimply.com. Remember to download your free copy of Fragile to Agile on bizsimply.com under the Resource tab, or via the link in the show notes. We have some great insights and solutions in this white paper. Big thank you to Fina Charlton, who is the show producer and editor from the Podcast Collective. Tune in next time for another interview, and in the meantime, find out more about us and subscribe to the newsletter and download free leadership tools at hospitalitymavericks.com. And don't worry, if you didn't get all of this, there will be links in the show notes. I'm Michael Tingser, and you've been listening to the Hospitality Maverick podcast show. Be Maverick.